Hi YouTubers, thank you for watching The Royal We. My name is Kevin, and in this video I want to talk to you about how your mind can betray you. That's right, your own mind can betray you. And when your mind betrays you, you can find yourself stuck in an abusive relationship that you have no business being in at all. Not only that, but you can be completely unaware of just how abusive the situation actually is. When your own mind betrays you, you can find it very difficult to get the heck out of the abusive situation and get as far away from the abusive person as you possibly can. This is what happens when you're betrayed by your own mind. Now, there's two ways that I have seen in my own life, ways in which the mind can betray. The first one that I want to talk to you about is through your experiences and how you process experiences in your life. I want to share with you a story. When I was 16 years old, I was invited to go see my very first concert. My mom's second husband had an extra ticket, and he decided to take me, and it was to see Pink Floyd. Have you heard of that band? Pink Floyd, I can tell you right now, is one of the greatest experiences up to that point that I had ever had. At the age of 16, walking into this stadium full of people, I can remember vividly this thick haze that filled the entire stadium. When the concert started, there were laser beams that shot from one side of the stadium to the other. During the middle of the show, I remember this giant disco ball that came up from the middle of the stadium and was spinning around, and as the lights hit it, it reflected spinning lights around the entire stadium, and it felt like the whole stadium was moving. And then this disco ball that was in the middle, this giant disco ball, broke open like this, and laser beams shot out of the top of it. I remember at the end of the concert, these giant pigs were flying over the top of the stadium, and they fell down, and they had these giant yellow glowing eyes. Anyways, they fell down into the middle of the stadium and blew up with fireworks. That was just the visual stuff. The sound was incredible. It was like surround sound. There were sounds all around you. What an amazing experience. Now, I want you to pay attention to something, YouTubers. How much detail I was able to share with you and how vivid that experience was in my life. I want to share something else with you. The man that took me, my mom's second husband, was a very abusive man in my life and in my mom's life. Verbally, emotionally, mentally abusive, very narcissistically abusive. 99% of the relationship was based on the abusiveness. What's interesting is that I can't tell you in detail, not the same detail that I just talked about that concert. I can't tell you that kind of detail about any one incident where he was abusive. I can talk to you in generalities, in general terms, like I could tell you that he would call me names, call my brother names, call my mom names. He would curse and cuss throughout the house. I could talk to you about how there were times where he had a narcissistic fit of rage and he went through the house punching holes in the wall. I watched him punch holes in the ceiling. He would pick up our stuff and throw it from one side of the room to the other. So I can tell you about general times where I've witnessed his narcissistic rage, but I couldn't tell you in detail about any one specific time in which he was abusive. Now, why is this? Well, it has everything to do with the way in which these experiences are processed. You see, the concert that I shared with you, I was allowed to process that. I came home from the concert and I shared it for weeks. I shared it with all my family. I shared it with all my friends. I was talking about this experience of seeing Pink Floyd nonstop. I went out and bought Pink Floyd records. It had that much of an impression on my life. I relived it. I was reliving that experience for weeks as I processed it. Now, when it comes to the actual abuse, which was 99% of the actual relationship with this man, there was no processing it. You know what it's like to experience narcissistic abuse. When you're yelled at and when you're demeaned and devalued, and then you have this anger and you have this hurt, but you can't do anything with it because when you talk to the abusive person, they just shut you down, right? They turn it around on you. Somehow it's your fault. Or it's a joke. Or they just don't want to hear it. And they say something like, I'm not going to argue with you, and they turn their back to you and they walk away. And this is what I witnessed with the abuse. I also witnessed my mom go through this. I watched her to get guidance on how to deal with abuse as he would yell and cuss and call her names. She did the same thing. She just put her head down and ignored it. What does this do? It teaches you to stuff it. You stuff and you hide the anger and the frustration that you have every right to feel. You push it to the back of your mind. Now, in psychological terms, they call mental shortcuts heuristics. So what happens is your mind creates mental shortcuts called heuristics, and it's a quick way for you to grab onto memories, and it's based on how you process things, and it becomes the first thing that you think of when you think of a situation. So what do you think happens when you're able to process the exciting things? Well, it pushes that to the front of your mind. It becomes an instant heuristic that you can make a snap judgment, and you can start to be biased towards that good time, that good experience. Meanwhile, the abuse, which could be 99% of the time, gets pushed to the back, unprocessed, undealt with. So it's not something that comes to the forefront of your mind. This is one way your mind betrays you. Because all of a sudden, when you think of this individual, when I think of my mother's second husband, I'll always remember that concert in vivid detail. But when it comes to the abuse, not so much. I know that it was an abusive relationship, but I don't have the detail because it wasn't processed in the same way. You follow me? The second way that your mind can betray you, and I want to spend a little bit more time on this one, is what's called confirmation bias. You don't even have to have an experience to form a heuristic, a mental shortcut. All you have to have is a concept, an idea. And I believe that this is actually what caused my mother to stay in an abusive relationship with an abusive man for 10 years. The reason is because she had an idea, a concept in her mind based on what society says, based on magazine articles, based on television shows, whatever, of what a marriage is supposed to look like. She was told that she needed to be married, to be a good woman. She needed to be a wife, and she needed to have a home, and she needed to take care of a husband. This created a heuristic, a mental shortcut, and not only that, but it caused what's called a confirmation bias. Confirmation bias means that she wanted it so badly, this concept, that she was willing to believe and persevere through the abuse, believing that she can have this relationship, this marriage, and this family. It's called belief perseverance. It drives people nuts when they see people going through this. I know a man that I'm very close to who was involved in a marriage for 10 years himself. He completely lost himself. This is a man's man I'm talking about, a guy's guy, into cars and sports and all that stuff. But when I went to visit him at his house, the whole house was taken over and pink frilly, blue frilly stuff, teddy bears everywhere. He was very excited one time to show me one room that he had. He had a room in this house where he had his stereo and pictures up on the wall. He was given a room. Excuse me. He shared with me how he slept in a different room than his wife because the snoring or whatever bothered the wife. But for some reason he believed so, despite the facts of the relationship, despite the facts that he had no say in the house, despite the facts that he was sleeping alone, he believed that he was supposed to stay in the marriage. Belief perseverance. For 10 years. It was painful to watch because he was ignoring the facts based on his belief, his concept, his idea. Ultimately, it's a very sad story. Ultimately, she ended up having an affair. But it doesn't stop there. This woman contacted the police and complained that he was abusive. And he was briefly arrested. The charges were dropped because there was no evidence. Thank God they were dropped. But it shows you that narcissistically abusive people have no bounds. They have no limits to what they'll do. So it's good to be aware of your concepts and compare your concepts and ideas to what facts are actually there. Right? His mind betrayed him. His ideas and his concepts kept him in a marriage by betraying him. He had confirmation bias. He was looking for anything that would justify his belief, but ignoring the facts that he was being abused. That he had no say and he had no voice. There's 3 things I want to stress to you guys in this video. And I hope that this sinks in and we can move forward in our lives knowing these things. The first one is this. Going back to the beginning of my video and my story, an experience is just an experience. Guys, don't allow experiences, good experiences that you have, don't allow that to give you an overall impression of a person. Listen, the devil can show you a good time, guys. The devil can show you a good time. Don't hand over all your trust and give credit by giving all your trust over to a person because you had a good time. We live in a society that's built around this good time. People have a good time, a good experience, and then they hand over all their trust and then they get ruined. In my story, it was a concert that I remember that's pushed to the front of my mind. Some people, maybe it's a weekend getaway. Others who are younger, maybe it's just one act of sex that they shouldn't have had to begin with. But this good time that they remember keeps them into a relationship where they're abused 99% of the time, demeaned and devalued. All because of one experience. You follow me? Don't allow the experience to put you in a place where you hand over your trust. The second thing I want to talk to you about is be okay with expressing your anger, your frustrations, your hurts, and your concerns. It doesn't matter if the narcissistically abusive person doesn't listen to you. Find someone who's going to listen to you. Get your anger. Experience that. Live the experience of the hurt and the anger. Not in a way that you're narcissistic yourself and abusing people, but get your anger out. Experience it. Feel it. There's nothing wrong with feeling anger. You have every right to feel anger. And if you process your anger, you feel your disappointment, you're going to get a balanced mindset of who the person actually is. You're not just going to focus on the good experiences. You'll focus on the good experiences and you'll have the hurtful, painful experiences to make your overall impression of how much you're going to trust that abusive person and what you need to do. Whether you need to get the heck out of the situation or whether it's okay to stay. But you have to process the pain, process the hurt, be okay with vocalizing it. And then the last thing I want to talk to you about is obviously do not let society or cultural norms or any of this stuff dictate what you need to have in life. Just because society says you have to be married in order to be happy, or you need to be in a relationship, or your boyfriend or your girlfriend needs to look like this, or this is what a relationship. Don't let that. Take that with a grain of salt. You're bombarded with these images daily, especially when the holidays come, Christmas time and this and that. You're shown images of what a family's supposed to look like gathered together around the Christmas tree. Well, maybe that's not your family. Maybe the reality is you have a real shitty family and they're narcissistically abusive to each other and to you. So don't go. Don't let your mind betray you into thinking that you have to be somewhere where you don't belong. To where you have to have something. Don't fall into the belief perseverance to where you are allowing yourself to be dragged through abuse just so you can hold on tightly to this concept and this idea of what a family is and what a relationship is and what a marriage is and what a boyfriend is or a girlfriend is or a best friend is. Listen, don't ignore the facts. Abuse is abuse. And if you're dealing with abuse, start to plan to get out of it. Thanks for watching, guys. If you have any questions, give me a call right there. My number's right there. I look forward to hearing from you. Be sure to like and subscribe. And I will be sure to make more videos right here on The Royal We. Thanks, guys.